Before we go any farther, let's take what we know and use it in a more practical way. So far we've studied the scales, and yes, we've made up some new melodies that maybe you don't even recognize. But let's take some melodies that you might recognize and show you how you can use no more than you know right now. If you know root 1 and root 2, you can play amazing things several different ways, but we could take some old songs, and we'll just take a piece of them rather than teach the whole thing to show you what direction we're going so that you can kind of get some momentum going for other scales too. Go in your book to page 13. We'll go through 13, 14, and 15, which will show you how we can take this very same scale, or scales, or combinations of scales, and play some very familiar melodies. So go right to your guitar, and to page 13, you'll see something. Just the one line there, the top line on page 13. You can take the little old simple C scale, and we're going to play Take These Chains from My Heart and Set Me Free, the old standard song. Taking the scale of C is all. Watch how we mix up the notes is all. It starts with the first note being 3A, up to 8 real fast. Notice we've left a lot of scale notes out because that's how this melody goes. Quickly down to 1 with the D lever, sliding to 3, 3A up to 8, back to 6D, to 3A, back to 1A. Now, if we take that in time, this will sound exactly like Take These Chains from My Heart and Set Me Free. Here it is, just like in the book. Now, go to the second line. We can take another old standard song that everybody might recognize. This is Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. Notice it starts on the root 2 group is all. We're just taking a different idea. It's just part of that C scale, and root 2 starts with quickly with the pedals down, back to no pedals, and then on down into some of the other group. Pedals down on 8, without, slide back to that 6, to 3 pedals. So here we are. This is just the first line of Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. It goes. Notice there is phrasing, and I've given you the numbers of the beats along the bottom of each one. Okay, go to page 14, and we'll take something else here. You can take Cold, Cold Heart, which is out of the root 2 scale and some of root 1. Here we go. Starts up on 11A. That's that C chord we talked about. Listen. That's the first 2 lines on page 14. One more time. Notice the phrasing of it as it goes. Here we go. Page 14 is Cold, Cold Heart through root 2. Second line. Very easy little melody to pick out if you know that scale. All right, on to page 15, and we can take the old song of Release Me from way back using some of both scales. Here we go. Release Me starting with, again, root 2, but quickly it'll change and go to the upside down melody too. Here we go. Release Me at the very top of page 15. Sorry. Let me do that again. First line of Release Me. Now on to the second part. And the next line. Here's page 15, line 1 and 2 again. It's Release Me. Long pause. Next line. And that's it. Those are very simple, very straightforward scale runs. Notice what we've done. We've taken all the rules and went right by the rules. We played nothing but the scale notes we studied. And these chords, and the song was changing chords, but we used the basic C scale to pick out the melody we're looking for. Just with no more than 2 scales. It might be a little harder to find every melody you want, but with no more than 2, you could have found probably a dozen And you can now, if you really know your scales and how they're going to sound, you can find a dozen songs the same way. So you might take what you know right now, you might want to stop right here and experiment a little bit. See how many songs you can think of that you might pull out of your hat using no more than these two. But there's more to come. The plot thickens, as they say. So we're going to come right back and take up a new scale, another root, like a root 3, which will help and kind of ease the tension on finding some of the melodies too. So take this much, maybe go back through these things and get the idea of how the scales are going to be broken up. Notice we use two things. We use the order of the notes to change the song. We're trying to tell the facts here. We're not lying about how the melody goes. We're picking exactly the right notes in that scale that make it sound just right, and then we're using the phrasing. So there's time to stop, a time to go. Okay, take this much, see what you can get out of it, and we'll come right back and we'll take up root 3. Let's take a whole new scale here. On page 16 in your book there, we'll take a scale that makes it easy to transpose, and it's quite nice to hear as well. But I like this scale because you can move it to any other key that you want it without having to move too much. In the first roots we've taken, like the root 1 and root 2, those scales moved left and right quite a bit. And if you're kind of a timid player and maybe a new player, transposing from the key of C to A or to B flat or to F or something like that might intimidate you, and you might not want to play the whole scale. But with this new scale on page 16, we're going to call it root 3. It's the whole scale, and really it's parts of the other two, but it's all in one spot. So we're going to find the C scale and the melody to many, many songs all on one fret. And what that means is we're going to be able to play the chords of C and F and G, and if a song changes to the relative minors and all that stuff, you can still find the melody all in that one spot. Now that doesn't make it flow real well, but it is possible to play, and this scale has its own sound in itself, so I wouldn't discount it as being a pretty scale or anything like that. It's kind of a bell sounding type thing, and it has a few little tricks to it too. So let's go right to page 16 in your book and right to your guitar. You'll see what I'm talking about. The first line there on page 16 says root 3, a new scale. Well, it's a very simple little scale, except it does have some peculiar fingerings. If there's anything hard about it, that's hard, I suppose. Starting with the first note, and then the second note with the B pedal in there. Notice it's strings 6 and 7, too. That's not a misprint. That's the way it is. And then on up to the third note, and the pedals down. Going out and hitting strings 2 and 5 with no pedal. Pedals down, you can use both of them there. And then out to the first and second chromatic string. And finally to the top one. That's quite a nice little scale. Here's the first line. Now, it's nice to be able to play that backwards. Let's do exactly that same thing backwards. So you'd like to be able to learn to play that scale in and out just like that without any mistakes. Let me give you a little word of advice that helps in that scale. On the second note especially, your thumb being right in there can touch that 8th string when you get through with the first note. So here's the first note. When you go to the second one, instead of having to cut it off with your hand and then pick the second one with a B pedal in there, throw your thumb down there and cut off the 8th string and leave just the 6th string ringing. And then go ahead and hit the 7th string for the next note. Very strange little combination of picking and coordination. That way you can squeeze the pedal in and get rid of the note, and you don't have to mute anything. And then on up. So you see the thumb popping in and out to actually do some muting with the thumb. And so forth. Well, let's take the second line. There's a new wrinkle to this one as well, another way of playing it, and it works better in the descending order than it does going up. So here's the second line on page 16, coming down through the scale, same as before, the first note, second one. Now here's where the change comes from A to A, and throw the D lever in to get that note, and then on down. So when we're going up, why not take the first line for the up root, but if you're going to come down through the scale, use the second line. It just lends itself more to that. A good way to practice, again, is along with the first rhythm track on your cassette there. So let's practice going up through the first line and down through the second line. You can go slow and then fast. So here we are with the first track.
2.
Slow first.
3, 4.
Now quicker. Well, let's try the second line, the descending order, going here. One more time, descending. Up and then down. And that's as easy as it can be. That's really not a new scale in many ways. That's many parts of the old scale. Let's use this scale in combination with one we've already done. That's the old root 2 goes or flows right into this one. If you look at page 17, you'll see, well, use the same scale going up. So the first line on page 17 is nothing but that upward scale. Until you get to the last note there on the first line. Instead of hitting 3 and 4, we're going to hit 3 and 5, because all of a sudden at this point we want to transpose our thoughts from this little scale to the old root 2 and take from the 8th fret and go all the way to 15. So we start with that last note on the first line, and then line 2 goes right on through root 2. So here's page 17, root 2 and 3, a combination of the two. Go on up. Well, you could do that backwards too as well, but let's just take it like it is. Here we go, along with the first rhythm track again. Page 17, the combination of the two. Learning to put them together. Change. Let's do that all one more time. Both lines together. And go. Change. Let's take it backwards and see how it sounds. Much harder to go down because you can't see where you're going. One more time, down and go. And that's all there is to it. You take that much of the scale and you can learn a lot about the root 3. But there's a better way. Go to page 18 if you've already got root 3. If you haven't, go ahead and stop. But go to page 18 right quick, and we've made up a little melody or a song that'll teach us all about this root 3 without any combinations right fast. But this is going to go along with the second track. The first notes have a phrase to them because it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's going to be a phrase in this. We're going to use this as a melody to a song. I've written one. We're going to call it All Around Root 3. So that's what's on page 18. A slight pause, and then we pick up with a little reverse scale. On to the second line. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Nice little pause here. There's 4 beats there. Now this little tune takes up 2 pages, so we'll go on over to page 19 and finish it out. So page 19, notice that this song goes through the chords of C and G7. This is very similar to a lot of songs. Here we have it, the first notes there on the top line, page 19, it goes. There's that same little phrase as we had before. It'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4. Slight pause, 2 beats, and then we pick up with the D lever. Now this is going to come very quickly, this last 2 notes on the top line. And then the last line. Notice we're mixing the notes up. It's no longer pure scale. We're cheating. We're throwing out notes, and we're phrasing. So here we go. Here's page 18 and 19, sort of in slow motion, so you can hear the melody. 3, 4. Two, 3, 4. 2. Hurry. 1, 2, 3. Repeat from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Next page. 4. Now, go up to your very next track there, or the second track on your cassette, and you'll hear this is a nice little 4/4 thing. We practiced to it before. And all this same scale will come out to be C, G7, and G, and we'll have a melody. Nobody would ever know this is a C scale, but it's just root 3.
4.
Pause long here. Back to the top. Repeat it all. Second line. Next page. With feeling this time. Back to the top. Back to the top again. And that's about it. That's a nice little track, a nice little tune. It's called All Around Route 3. And it'll teach you everything you want to know about Route 3. A great little scale for some great melodies. We'll be right back and put them all together. Now that you've got that little scale in mind, let's do a song that's really a nice practical use of this same scale. The one we just did there was something we made up. And maybe if you're not really familiar with that melody, it didn't mean a lot to you, but there's an old song that will mean something to you. And if you've been steel playing very long, you've heard a lot of steel players play Mansion on the Hill, and the way most of them literally play it is using this little scale the first time through. And there's other ways that you can play the same melody, obviously, using the root 1s and the root 2s that we've used, but it lends itself very well to this root 3. So if you go in your book there to page 20, we'll take just 4 lines. It's a very simple little melody, and we'll go through it sort of in slow motion, and you'll see it's nothing but this scale. Yet it goes through the chords of C and F and G, and yet you never get out of the scale. So this is a perfect example of what you can do with one scale just on one fret. There's a whole song played here, literally just using the pedals, never moving off the 8th fret. So go in your book there to page 20. Let's go right to the guitar, and we'll take the first line right there, which starts with 2 pickup notes, if you'll notice. And the first 2 notes just go, starts right up the scale there, doesn't it? That's exactly like the scale was. And as a matter of fact, the third note there is the third note in the scale that we had before. And we have a nice pause there. Notice there's 3 beats there. So it says 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. And this is kind of a little tricky thing, but it's still part of the scale. Notice that it goes from 8 with no pedals. So we actually get it's a little B pedal first is all. And after you have the B pedal in, then hit the D lever. And you get a nice little changing harmony. 2 beats there, and then you come on down. This is still part of the scale. So there's your first line of Mansion on the Hill. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2. Now down to line number 2 it goes. Jump up to a higher note in the scale. Now we're going to use the first string. You could use the first 2, but let's just use the first one. It's easier when you actually get to playing. And then down to another note in the scale there, 8A. Jump down to the 6 and 7 string. Single note on 8A. So here's line 2 now, just exactly as it's written. 3, 4, 1, 2. So let's put line 1 and 2 together, sort of like it ought to be in a practical use. 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3. Second line now. Two, 3, 4. Long pause. You've got 6 beats you can hold there. Now let's go to line 3. A little grace note here. We go back to the 7th fret. That's the only time we actually move. It's just a cheater note. It just slides into right on through the scale now. Pure scale, single notes now. Very easy third line, isn't it? Here we go. Line number 3 on page 21 there goes. Long 4 beats there. Now we'll go to the very last line there on page 21. Goes. Literally, that is part of the old root number 2 scale, if you remember it. And then, one more time. Line number 4 goes. B pedal. And you can let all those notes ring in there. Notice you don't have to cut off a lot of them. You're not doing a lot of chopping around there. The whole song is kind of sort of bellish sounding, so letting it ring together is kind of a nice thing. It doesn't take great technique. You can be a terrible player and just know this scale and do miracles with it. So here's the whole thing in slow motion. All 3 lines, page 20 and 21. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 2. Second line. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Third line. Third line now. 2, 3. Now, we've got a rhythm track on this tape. It's the third rhythm track up on side one of your cassette. Let's do this thing along with the rhythm track. Notice it has two pickup notes, so the count will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That's where you pick up line 1. Here we go, along with the track.
3, 4, 1.
Go. Line 2. Line 3. Line 4. Long wait here now, 6 beats. Start all over again. Line 2 now. Long pause, 6 beats. Line 3. And the last line. Let's play it through one more time, and that'll be it. Use the pedals, line 2. Long pause there, line 3. And the last line. Now the song will go on, but we'll stop it right here. You stop right here, take this little thing and do the best you can, and come right back, and it's your turn. There are a few extra notes we need to take into consideration if we're going to use more scales and add root 1 to root 2 to root 3. Go up to page 22 and 23 in your book, and you'll see there on the first line of page 22, we're starting the root 1 scale right there on 8, not down on 1D like we did before, way down there. Well, we'll start right on 8 and take the scale from 8 up to 15, and this is very much like what we've already done. So this is a brief review. So here's line number 1 there of more of root number 1 on page 22. Starts with the 8 to the 8A, to the 10A, to 11A and F, to 13A, and 15A. Well, that's a nice melody with a nice harmony to it. Let's do it one more time. You'll see what I'm talking about. Now we can do that backwards. Now let's go to line 2. Here's just another way of doing the same thing. Same harmony, but it's another way of looking at it, I suppose, so you don't get out-fretted when you do this thing. So this is line 2. It starts the same way. The first 3 notes are identical. Then go to 13 with a D lever. The same harmony as you had before on 11A and F. Then to 13A. Or you could go straight to 15 with no pedals. That's a proper harmony too. And then to 15A. Here it is one more time. Line number 2 then. Or maybe backwards. Or go on over to page 23. We'll take the whole thing. This is a nice long run that we must learn if we're ever going to be very good at playing melodies, because it's a longer scale than just 8 notes. This takes in several scales. We're starting to combine them here. So here we are. The top line on page 23 starts again on 1D, down to 1A, to 3A, just like before. Let's do 4A and F for the harmony. 6A and F, 8A. We're going up like we just did before to 10A, to 11A and F, on to 13A. This is the next line, to 15A. Now, this is where we stopped before, but we're going to carry it on up to 13A on the 4th and 5th string. We're going higher in the scale to 15A, and then back to 13 with no pedals on strings 3 and 5, to 15, and the pedals down. Now, here's that whole scale from top to bottom. Now, before you go any farther, we need to learn that scale all the way. That's a long C scale, and we must learn it backwards. So let's take it backwards, down. Those are great scales for not getting out positioned with. So what we're going to have here is a longer scale than 8 notes, but it's very necessary if we're ever going to be able to play those long lines that melodies have. So it's your turn. Go at this thing and we'll come right back. We're almost ready to take all these scales now and go out and play with the big dogs. There's only 1 or 2 things we need to add to all this, and that's something that you already know. It's just another way of using it. We've tried playing a song with a root 1. You find out that with just the root 1 travel using the 5th and 8th string, it sort of limits you to one way of playing. Well, that's why we picked up the root 2 up on the 3rd and 5th string. But even that limits you to one way of playing. And then we went to the root 3, which puts you just on 1 fret, but even that, if you think of the one root only, then that's only going to give you one way of playing. If we combine all 3 together, then we have some variety and we don't get out fretted. We can take the root 1 that we do know very well by now because that's the first thing we studied. If we take one little slice of information and add to that root 1, you get a whole new scale, which is probably the most important of all the scales you'll learn if you combine it with the root 2 and the root 3 that we had before. In fact, if you combine it as a root 1. What I'm talking about is up on page 24 and 25 in your book, and you might go to that in your book and follow along. But I have it here on the board, and we're going to talk about something. Notice how the root 1 started earlier. Remember the first thing we studied was playing root 1. We started down with a C on 1 with a 1 and the D lever, but we played strings 5 and 8, didn't we? If you change what you know right there and play the different strings, for instance, if you come up and play strings 4 and 5, you have the D lever in there. Instead of playing 5 and 8, we're going to turn the harmony over. So literally what we have here is the melody on the bottom and the harmony on the top. So what we're saying is, take the same scale that you know and that you've used all this time, and instead of playing 5 and 8, play 4 and 5. Well, if that's true, come up to 1 just with a 1A. That was the second note. When it comes to 3, just play 3A. Disregard the 8th string now. We're going to play strings 4 and 5 there, 1D, 1A to 3A. When it comes up to 4, hit 4 with the F lever. Disregard the 8th string. So we're just going to play those 2. When it comes to 6, hit the F lever in there like that. When it comes to 8, it's just 8. When it comes to 10, it's just 10. When it comes to 11, you come to the F pedal there. When it comes to 13, you come to 13A. When it comes to 15, it comes to that. So literally what we're saying is that all this bottom line is not important anymore. What's important is what we have up here on the top line. It's sort of a new scale, but it's not a new scale. It's the same information you've known all this time. What we're trying to say is, take something you know, use it another way. The old scale is pretty, but it limits you to what you can play. This new scale, which is sort of a upside-down scale, that's why we call it the root 1 upside down there on page 24, gives you a whole new sound. It's almost like having a new scale because it is in sound, but in your mind, it's the old scale, the same way you've been doing it. Be careful, though, because it sounds different, it'll fool you, and you have to get used to that. That's why we want to practice this thing along with a rhythm track. Fact is, it'd be nice to practice root 1 first, maybe, get the sound of root 1, and then just change that harmony over. Get off of strings 5 and 8, go up to strings 4 and 5. Matter of fact, let's go right in the book, and we'll go through this thing on page 24 and page 25. And let's take the first line there. We'll just go real slow through it, and you'll see it's identical in sound. The first 3 notes, let's say, are the 1D there on the 4th and 5th string. Then up to 3A, to 4A and F, to 6A and F, to 8A, to 10A, to 11A and F. Now go to the second line there, 13A to 15A. Now we're not going to stop right there. We're going to go to 16A and F, which is really nothing but an octave above the 4A and F. That's right above it in that other line there. We're taking the scale a little higher, on up to 15 now on strings 3 and 4. And we'll end it with a high C right there on 15, both pedals down. Let's do that one more time. Here's the page 24, lines 1 and 2. That's a pretty scale and the most useful scale of all. Now, if it works up, let's practice it down. You've got to have it both ways, so take it just exactly in the reverse. Starting there with the last line. A little harder going down. Can't see where you're going. The bar and your hand are covering up the frets, so practice the down more than you do up, because going to the left, you can't really tell what fret you're going to be on. You do it a lot by ear. Well, let's go to page 25. It's the same idea, but if you'll recall, we had a root 1 that used some changes in harmonies using the D level. Well, exactly the same thing is going to happen with page 25. We start with the same first 3 notes up to 3A. But it changes right there, and the plot thickens. We go to 6 with the D lever instead of 4A and F. This is where it came there before, but the same harmony is going to come out to 8D, back to 8A to 10A. Now, right here is where 11A and F came up before, but we're going to change that out and go up to 13 with the D lever. And we're changing the scale quite a bit now. This is quite new information here, so pay attention right here. Don't go to sleep on me. It's 13D to 13A, but we're going to go out to the first and second string chromatics. This is why those strings are on there, by the way. Then up to 13 with the third and fourth string to 15, and then 15A and B. Now, in effect, both of these pages sound identical in sound, but because they're on different strings and they pull a different way, you'll play songs differently. Again, here's page 25, one more time. Nice sound. Once again, here's page 24 using the A and F lever. Listen, there's not much difference in sound. That was 24. Here's 25. Hard to tell there's any difference at all there, literally, until you actually start playing a melody, but you'll notice them. So you want to work both of these in and out. You want to play both of them backwards and forwards. Matter of fact, the best way to practice is along with that rhythm track. Let's just go through each one with a rhythm track one time. Here's page 24, the first track, the C track.
2.
Side 1.
2, 3, 4.
And let's go to page 25. Now, we might do them backwards. Here's 24 backwards. Need both of them. 25 backwards. All of this is just great practice for melodies, because melodies are going to do 2 things. They're going to use the scale, you know that, and they are also going to use a phrasing, but the most important thing is knowing where the notes are. The phrasing will come, but you've got to know where the notes are, and you need a long string of notes. But most importantly, you've got to be able to play this scale from the bottom to the top, from the top to the bottom. But there's one thing we're leaving out. All melodies don't start with the first note, do they? They don't all start with the last note. A melody might start with the second note in that scale, or the 4th, or the 8th, or the 12th one that we just did there. It might start anywhere, because the writer has a right to say anything he wants to. Anytime he wants to, he has poetic license there. So you must know the scale well enough to start anywhere in that scale and go up or anywhere in that scale and go down. So as you're practicing these scales, before you go any farther, and we're going to get really into some heavy stuff here before long, the scales are the tools you use. So you have to be good with those tools. Not necessarily starting that tool at the first note. We have to be able to start in the middle and go up. Start in the middle and go down. So before we go any farther, take root 1 and see if you can play it from left to right, of course, going up, ascending the scale. Be able to play it down from the top down. But then pick a spot in the middle somewhere and go from the middle up, from the middle down. Pick a spot anywhere in the scale and see if you know it from the middle, not necessarily from the front. Take root 2 and do the same thing. Take root 3. Then take the upside down scale we got here. If you can do all that, you're prepared to start a war and win. This is a lot of information. It's a lot of ammunition to fire anytime you need it. You won't be caught dead-handed at any time. You won't be caught off the fret or out of place. So take these, just like we have them so far, get all these roots in mind, and we're going to come right back and we'll use several of these roots, put them all together. Maybe in one line of a song, you'll use all 3 of the roots we've been talking about. Before you know it, you'll be all over. And then you'll find out that we're not talking about really a root 1 as a scale or a root 2 or root 3. It's all one massive information package of notes that are all one scale. Root 1, 2, and 3 will be root 123, not root 1 or 2 or 3. It's all one big information. Keep in mind, we're going to another key someday. So you have to take all this information and move the pattern of all this information, and it can become A or D or whatever you want it. So stop right here, get this in mind, or going any farther is not going to do you much good. So this is the most important step in your life if you've never learned the scales. Getting them all put together in one little bundle is the real key to everything. We'll come right back and we'll take it one step farther. Your turn. Go up to page 26 and 27 in your book, and let's take the root 1 and the upside down root 1 and see how it works before we go any farther. Up there on page 26, the first line, we're going to take Mansion on the Hill, since we know that little phrase, and show you how to do it a whole new way. Here's the first line there, using the root 1 upside down as the pickup notes. It goes, and then there's a nice long pause there. We go right from there down to the strings 5 and 6, which is really part of the old root 2, on down to 3 to 6. So right there in the first line, we're using the root 1 upside down and the root 2, which is upside down. So here's the first line of Mansion on the Hill there on page 26. It goes 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2. Nice long pause there. Now let's go to the second line there, which is still the old root 2 position, upside down, using strings 5 and 6, and it goes all the way up to 15. Now there's a spot in the scale, 13 A and B, which is really a C7th, which is not part of a major, but we're sneaking it in because it does fit this song. Because we're leading to F here, here's where we hit 13. It's the old root 1, all the way down to 6D. Several combinations of scales there right fast. Here we go. The second line again, it goes. Change. Now here's first and second line together so we get the whole context of it. 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Again. Now let's go to the third line, which is we're back into the old root 1 upside down again. It goes all the way up to 13 with that D. Look at all the scale notes we left out of that one there. We went all the way from the third note in the scale, 12 notes above almost. There's that C7th again. Quickly we're going to change back to root 1 the right way. 13 A and D, which is a nice C9th. Quickly off of it. This may be the toughest line of all of them just because it changes strings. Here we are. Line 3 again. Change. And now let's go to line 4, way up to 13. Now down to 10. And the 13D for the last note. Again, line 4, it goes. And then ease off. Okay, let's do the whole thing sort of in slow motion, but without the track so you can get the timing. From the top, page 26 and then 27. 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and we start again right there. That's it. Let's take that whole thing. This is a great way of playing a nice, smooth, and a slick Mansion on the Hill. Now, we know it the other way, up there with Route 3, too. Remember when we did it up here? We did it the early way and Route 3 all on one fret, so we can combine those two. We can do one and then the other. We'll do it the first time through using the one we just did, the Route 1, and then right in the middle, we'll go back and we'll do the Route 3, all on the 8th fret, and then we can move back. It gives us variety, and we've used 3 scales, literally, because this one uses Route 1 and 2, the other one is Route 3. Here we go, Mansion on the Hill, the 3rd track on your cassette.
2, 3, 4, 1.
Go. One more time, just like that. Go back to the Route 3 that we did earlier. change that sound up back to the original we started with. Here on the end, the last line again. Okay, it's test time. Let's go up to page 28 and 29 in the book. Let's take the same scales we have been using and let's change them to the key of A. Look at the top of page 28. The first line starts an A scale. This is part of a little tune we wrote on a scale of 1 to 3, we're calling it. Starts with the root 3 scale right there. It goes. And notice we're given each one of those things 2 beats apiece. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we go to 5 with the D lever, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now the second line, we're in another scale root here, up to 10 to 12, 12 with pedals, 15 to 17, and hold it 4 beats. So literally what we're doing here is we're going through a long A scale using root 3 to start with. Then we're going to change to the root 2 that we had before. Now, page 28 will go along with the 4th rhythm track on your cassette, which is in the key of A. It goes A to E7th. Notice how this scale will become A and E7th. We'll go to page 29. We've got a little descending scale that'll take us another root down. So on page 29, the first line starts on 17. It goes back to the chromatic strings. Now we're going to go down through a root 1, upside down, to 15, to 12, to 10, the D lever. Now down to the next line, 7A, to 5A. Now all of a sudden we're back in the root 3 we started with before. One more time. Here's page 29. The first 2 lines there. So in a sense, this will make a little song because we're going to put it along with a rhythm track, which is A to E7th. Nice 4/4 feel. You'll never recognize it as really just being scales, but that's what it is. Here it is from start to finish in slow motion. Be 3, 4, 1, 2. Two, 3, 4, and you start down. Now that sounds pretty blah and vanilla right there, but as soon as you add rhythm and bass to it, it becomes chocolate and strawberry and everything else. So here we go, along with the 4th track on side 1, A to E7th. On a scale of 1 to 3, we call it.
2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
2, 3, 4. Page 29. Start again, page 28. Page 29. Notice how each position takes on the chord sound that we're playing it against. Second line. Page 29. And that's all we're doing there is taking that piece of information right there, and we're just practicing scales. That's all three scales put together, but in a new key. And that's what we're after, is taking the old information we've learned all this time, and now we take it and learn to transpose it. But we're not learning something new. We're playing the same old scales, but everything is 3 frets lower. We've gone from C to A. The idea is to learn to do this in any key you need it to be done in, for whatever key someone might sing in. So you know these scales well enough that you can grab that melody that's right out of that song and play it several ways, not just one, but several ways. That's it for this unit. Take this much and really get this well in mind before you go any farther, because it gets tougher if you don't know these scales. It's impossible if you don't know these scales, and quite easy if you do. So until next time, study this hard. It's not going to beat you to death, but it takes a lot of practice and time, and you want to learn to hear these things before you play them. You want to have it in your mind that you could sing the note before you play it. You know exactly what it's going to sound like. All right, it's your turn. We'll come back with the next part. We're obviously here at the end of this part, but I want to leave you with a couple of things you need to think about as you take this thing and rehearse it and practice all these things. Remember one thing, scales are only part of the sound. Hitting the right note is fine, but it's the technique you use, and scales are excellent for practicing that technique. Remember that every note has to have sparkle to it. It needs to mean something, and you do that with your hands, and that comes out of vibrato and the right foot and all that stuff. So when you practice your scales, keep in mind the technique that you use to use them. If you're not adding vibrato to every note, now I say this in classes, and everybody looks at you and they shake their head, yeah, I know what you're talking about. But you need to stop and maybe video yourself playing and see if that bar moves on every note, because vibrato is what breathes that little spark of life in every note. And without vibrato, if you get too busy practicing the scale, that'll keep you busy. You'll cheat yourself out of the beauty of the scale and the melody. So as you practice in scales, practice that vibrato, practice that right foot technique, not cutting off every note, for instance. It's all right to hear the picks in there. The next little thing is that if you go back and listen to the early records, like the Ray Price records, the old Jimmy Day things that happened on Ray Price records, and the Buddy Emmons sounds, and everybody since then, some of the best melodies, some of the best introductions, some of the best breaks that have ever been on a record were pure scale. You'll hear that now, now that you've known scales a little bit, and now that you've played along with a rhythm track, and you hear how they change and they become different colors as the chords change. You'll notice that all those great intros that you heard from years back were pure scale, and that came from the knowledge of scale. So you'll recognize them for what they are. They may not be as great as maybe they once were to you, because you'll realize the guy was just playing a scale. But that was a lot of genius in itself, just knowing that. So keep in mind, the scale is the secret, isn't it, to everything. The technique is the secret to everything.